Good afternoon and welcome back to the Stadio School of Education distance learning event this Saturday, the 16th of May. Our next session is EPS 102 for the Diploma in Grade R program, and that is presented by Ms. Treblin DeVet. Good afternoon, Treblin.
Oh. There we go. Good afternoon, Simon. I'm sorry about that.
Not at all. How are you? Are you well?
I am very well. It's a sunny day in Durban, so I hope that this session brings some sunshine and some, hopefully some relief and some further, conversation around some of the questions that have been posed.
Yes, absolutely. We're relieved that the internet problems that everybody was experiencing this morning have sorted themselves out. So we're looking forward to a great session with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Simon. Okay, so I'm just getting access to my screen to share. Okay. Hi, okay, so Simon, am I correct in saying that everybody is seeing the screen in front of them, what I'm seeing, my PowerPoint? Excellent.
That's right, good to go.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that. So I did see via the participants that we have about 8 participants. So I do understand that a lot of students are going to be tuning into the recording of the session. But please, those of us who are here for the live session, please feel free to ask various questions. And students who were unable to attend the session, please feel free to post any questions on the forum options that I have on the page after the session, because you might have quite a few questions or queries about specific things. So before we get into this, I just wanted to remind us that this is technically our 4th study session, because there have been many videos that I've posted, and each one of these videos links to an activity for you to complete. So please be sure that you complete the activities, and please feel free to engage and ask questions on the various forum options that I have placed on the ECR page. So as we dive into this session, I am going to be discussing a lot of queries and questions that many of you have posted to me. Many of you have sent direct questions to me. So I will be speaking to a lot of those questions today. But just starting with this session, I wanted to remind us of 2 things, and that's actually why I've posted these pictures on this cover page. So firstly, I want to remind us of that working analogy that we started with from live session 1, which, if you can believe it, was, I think, the 29th of February. It feels like a lifetime ago, but it was actually only a couple of months ago. And in the session, I said to you, I want you to think of the psychological theories that we are going to encounter and explore as puzzle pieces to revealing this greater image about the possible factors and forces that shape specific behavior. So I want you to keep coming back to this analogy. I want you to keep thinking and focusing on each theory and how the theories work together, how the theories are different, but how it actually conveys this larger picture around human behavior and human development. And then I've also put this other picture here because I did want to remind you that, we are here to assist and engage with one another. We might be separate via distance learning, but we have technology available to engage. So this picture I did notice after I chose it, the girl who's sitting on the chair, she's got a thought bubble that's got a lot of squiggles. I do hope that by the end of the session, you will have more, concrete images and a concrete understanding. But if you do still have squiggles, then contact me. Use the forums available to post your questions. Okay, so in diving into this idea of using our forums and keeping connected, I just wanted to point out 3 different things. So it's very important for you to keep updated with the announcements section on our ECR page. Up until this point, I have been responding to quite a few direct questions and direct messages that you posted to me via my ECR inbox. And I'm getting to a point where I'm unable to respond to many of these questions in the time frame that I would like to. So I'm hoping by now that you, most of you have had quite a lot of joy with getting fairly instantaneous feedback. I know sometimes it takes a few days, but I do try to get a good turnaround time. But I would like you to please access the details in the announcements section, and then you can post any queries or responses directly to an announcement that has been made. So many of you are sending me messages asking me questions that have already been addressed in the announcement section. And up until this point, I have been responding to you because I understand that given our current circumstances, many of us are feeling particularly anxious and you're wanting to know information, and things are obviously changing, and we have moved into this continuous assessment space. So many of you wanted clarity. So please go to those announcement sections and then you can ask direct questions there. Also, please be reminded that the announcement notices that I post should link to your ECI emails, to your Stadio Embury emails. So please also keep up to date with those student mails. Then also you will notice on the page that I have posted various assessment forums and various forums for you and wikis and many kind of activities for you to engage with one another. Ask questions, respond to one another. I really do want to create this engagement. One such assessment forum that I posted, I saw that students were actually helping themselves with questions and concerns. So I really appreciated that. And I really want us to take that collective focus to help one another. But please use these platforms. But then your option 3, and I really want you to try go through the option 1, option 2, and option 3, only your last resort. Please send me an email. I want us to move away from direct messaging on ECR. Please contact me via my email. I'm often on email, so I can respond fairly quickly to your questions or concerns. So please use these. I do want to keep connected to you. And I do want to apologize at this point for bombarding you with many messages and updates. But I promise there is method to my madness. I do have a life outside of work, but at the moment I am acutely aware that many of you are concerned about things. So as things progress and as I update a useful resource, I will communicate this to you. So please bear with me. You can then obviously go read through the announcements in your own time frame. Okay, so these are the most important communication platforms. I've just taken a screenshot of where we can find it on our ECR page, and I have highlighted them. So very important for you to go to these. This is options 1 and options 2. So the second option that we see here, you would have noticed that I've updated it to assessment related queries. Initially, I only had it as assignment queries, but now that we're moving into completing multiple assessment tasks, I've changed the requirements of this particular forum. So please would you post your queries there. Many of your colleagues and peers have posted very important questions and are helping themselves work through the module. So please use these platforms. I will respond to these. Okay, so this is, I just wanted to remind you at this point of our new continuous assessment breakdown strategy. And I wanted to speak to you a little bit about the rationale and thought process about how we are shifting into this continuous assessment space. So continuous assessment by definition means that your overall mark is made up of numerous different assessment tasks. So you would have obviously all completed assignment 1, and we all have the online quiz coming up on the 22nd of May. I have received numerous queries about this, and I will be speaking to this in further slides to come. But I just wanted to point out at this stage that there seemed to be a little bit of confusion about the difference between an online quiz and an online assessment. So at the moment, most of you would have been completing your formative, I think the study guide refers to them as online tests, but I like to frame them as being online quizzes. So they really help you progress through the material, they progress through theories, and it's really questions to help you to understand and well, see whether you understand the theory. You can self-reflect on what aren't you understanding, what are you misunderstanding, and then you'll be able to review your attempts and see your marks. At the moment, those online quizzes or online tests, you can do them multiple times because it is formative. It's helping you form your understanding of theory. The online quiz, however, you will only have a limited amount of times to do this, and I will be speaking to this on the next slide, but I just wanted to point out that you won't have these unlimited opportunities to do it because this is actually going to be for marks. Then our online assessments, they can be seen as proper online tests, meaning that there's not just one word answers, one word responses. We're going to require you to apply your knowledge. And all of these together, all of these tasks together will make up your overall mark, which needs to be 50% in order to pass this module. And this I've just copied and pasted directly from the updated assessment guide. And please be mindful that you are working from the updated assessment guide. So what I have done is I have posted a lot of this information from the assessment guide on our ECR page. A lot of these pointers that I'm discussing should reiterate what you have already seen and what you do already know. But I do sometimes find that repeating it helps it really to sink in and encourages us to really understand where we're coming from. But I do want to point out that with continuous assessment, you do have these multiple opportunities to learn from your mistakes and to then obviously apply your knowledge. But the only drawback of this is that there is no supplementary assessment. So there's no, with a normal exam, essentially you get a second opportunity with a sub exam. This is not the case here. So I don't say this to make you feel anxious. I don't think you need to be anxious. It's just to be mindful that you are working through the material step by step, and you are working through the resources that I have posted online step by step, and that you treat every assessment task that contributes towards your overall mark very seriously. Okay, also just a reminder at this point, if for whatever reason you are unable to complete the assessment tasks, and this is particularly many people are having issues with connectivity, data related issues, it's very important that you apply for a retest. Very important that you contact student support about these processes, but you are also more than welcome to email me and just to let me know, and then so I'm also in the loop as well. Okay, Simon, at this point, sorry, could I just ask, I know there's only a few participants, but does anyone have any questions around this continuous assessment approach that we are now taking?
And just a reminder to our students watching, if you'd like to be a participant and share your audio and your video, you can simply raise your hand during a Q&A session and I'll contact you to arrange. Trevlin, I've just checked on YouTube and I don't see any questions there, and no questions have come in on the Zoom app either.
Okay, not a problem. If any students, if you are feeling, now's not the time for you to ask questions, you would like to reflect and think about the questions, please feel free to then post them on the forum space. But if you do have a question in mind, And even if you don't want to become a participant, a panelist, I think it is, you can just post your questions in the chat as well. So great, thank you, Simon. I'll just carry on then. Okay, so online quiz, 22nd of May coming up. I think there have been many questions about this. Many students are very concerned about this, but I just wanted to point out the difference between a quiz and an online assessment task. So firstly, our quizzes assesses a baseline understanding of theory. So how I like to think of a quiz is that it basically forces you to read through the material and to get a basic understanding. So because this online quiz is going to be multiple choice questions, it does not necessarily assess your deep application or understand your ability to apply or understand a theory. However, it does assess, can you identify correct information by a specific incorrect information? So it's really useful for me to get a sense of what is your baseline understanding of theory. And that is how we have generated our questions for this. So please be mindful that, like I've said, the quiz is going to consist of mostly lower ordered questions. So this means that you will be able to identify the correct response. It's not going to be application type questions. It really encourages you to read through material. But very importantly, I want you to be mindful that this will be timed. It will be a timed quiz. So you have to be very mindful about when you start the quiz and be mindful that you have 45 minutes to assign to the task. Okay, there will be 30 questions for you to respond to. I did a little bit of reading up about what would be a fair time, and the jury is probably still out on that, but generally they said about 1 minute per question. So you will have 1 minute per question. This means that you obviously will not be able to necessarily have time to look for the correct response in the study guide or textbook, but you need to begin the quiz when you think, okay, I have a really good understanding of the basics of the theories, the various psychological theories. Okay, also, I had a discussion with my HOD, and I'm hoping that you will all be happy about this, but we did decide that we will allow you to do 2 opportunities. So we are very mindful that sometimes the first opportunity, sometimes the wheels fall off, or there might be some kind of an issue. You maybe think you're ready, you take the test, and then you realize you were not ready and you did not anticipate these kind of questions. You will then be given a second opportunity. And we did have some negotiation about would we give you the average mark, but we then decided it would be in your best interest to give you the highest mark of the 2, because we are mindful that this is also, as much as it's summative meaning that it contributes to your overall mark. In a sense, it's also formative. It's helping you to formulate and understand basic theories and principles. So we did think it would be best to give you 2 opportunities. I know a student posted on one of the forums, she did ask how many opportunities there would be, and I did say there would only be 1. We have now changed that. So I will be going and updating the forum after this, but I just wanted to let you know about that. But be very mindful about when you start this process. It's obviously next Friday, and it's very important for you to go through the quizzes that you've currently been doing. Go through the multiple choice questions in your study guide, and also multiple choice questions from past papers. They will not be the same questions, but it's framed in the same vein, in the same kind of understanding and level. So use those past question papers, past quizzes as a gauge. Do you understand this? Would it be comfortable? Would you feel comfortable responding to this? Do you believe you are ready? But in saying that, we have not structured this to be difficult. It's really just this idea of, can you identify the correct response? Can you compare and contrast what is correct, what is incorrect? Okay, so I hope that this alleviate some anxiety, and I did sense a lot of anxiety from messages that I got from students. Okay. And then we move on to online assessments 1 and 2, and this is very different from a quiz. Okay, so quiz, like I've already said, low order responses, straight, one-word responses, the system marks that. This is higher ordered analysis type questions. So the system cannot mark these kind of questions. There will be either myself or my team of outsourced markers who have been trained and have been with me for a number of years. So they will be marking it. And we're really looking at the quality of your response, how best you can explain your understanding. So there is a higher level of application here and explanation required. So it's very important that you aim to apply your theoretical understandings, so all the theories, to case studies, scenarios, topical issues. There will be many issues that you will notice have a very sort of South African framework. We deal with current issues, and it's really the opportunity for you to apply your psychological knowledge. My assessment tasks don't like to just encourage you to regurgitate information. I'm really interested in what is your deeper understanding of a theory. So really that is what I'm going to be looking for in your responses. And it's very important that you become comfortable with this. And if you progress through the activities that I've posted on the ECI page, forums that I've posted, also obviously the activities in your study guide, which gives you a space to practice and model this type of response and type of questions, your response to these questions, then you will feel more comfortable with this. So really want to encourage you to make this information personally meaningful. So it's very important that you focus on specific factors. So when we are looking at psychology, I'm sure by now we know that each theory has specific factors and forces that seek to explain a part of human behavior. And we haven't really addressed this in our first live session, that no one theory is perfect. Coming back to that puzzle analogy, it only adds a piece to the puzzle. So it's very important for you to identify, how does this theory relate to me on a personal level? I think sometimes as students, we forget that psychology is the scientific study of human behavior, and we are human beings. So many of these theories that we are going to encounter actually explain different aspects of our life. It explains different aspects of our personality. It might explain situations that we are seeing around us, seeing happen around us. And I think particularly in this time of COVID and lockdown, I'm sure you are seeing a lot of these theories play out. So I want you to start those kind of psychological reflections, make it personally relevant, because then you will find that when you are preparing for these assessments, it's far more enjoyable because it's something that you can personally relate to and you can then comment on. So very important, I'm kind of repeating myself here a little bit, but it's very important to aim for meaningful and purposeful understanding. So we really want to bring that across. I know many of you are likely feeling very anxious. The textbook is very thick. It's sometimes very intimidating. And our study guide is obviously very detailed as well. But from some of you who have already participated in the course evaluations, it seems that most of you are enjoying progressing through this. So I want you to come back to that of making it purposeful, making it meaningful, and not being too intimidated by the size of the textbook. As much as there is a lot of information there, we do not want you to memorize the information. We really want to get you to have a deep, meaningful understanding of theory. Okay, also very important that you go through past exam papers. So it's very important if we're thinking back to our behaviorist perspective, and if at this point we are watching the recording and you think, oh, I can't really remember, pause it now maybe and go back to your textbook, because in behaviorism we talk about modeling, this idea of practicing and this idea of the environment informing behavior. So it's very important that you practice this activity of responding to these very open-ended higher order application questions. And you will have access to this from the past exam papers. So just to explain to you, just to a little bit of background about these two online assessment tasks. I was one of those very studious people who set the exam quite far ahead. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to respond to. And so I had a paper. And then I thought, okay, well, now that we're going into this continuous assessment task, that the exam is falling away, how can I modify these questions for online tasks? And that is where the online assessments come from. So it really is the best thing you can do to prepare is to go through past papers, make it meaningful. And I'd like to encourage you that when you are going through it, perhaps don't sit the first time with your textbook and with your study guide. Just get a sense of how do I feel about responding to this kind of question, and then obviously come back to your textbook and study guide. Also, very important that as much as these tasks can be seen as take-home assessment tasks, they are going to be application-based. So just having your textbook there, just having your course reader there and your study guide there is not going to be sufficient. You need to have a good understanding of material in that so you can access it. You will be required to apply your unique understanding. So I really wanted to emphasize this because I think there was some confusion about what level this test would be at. Just a reminder, quizzes, lower ordered questions, this will be higher ordered. Very important for you to go through those past exam papers. Okay, so now what I thought I would do is, and we will see how we are doing for time. Simon, please flag me down if I'm taking too long or we're running out of time. But what I thought of doing is providing a very brief summary of some of the key important areas in our study sessions. So I'm not going to go through Bronfenbrenner's theory, and I'm not going to go through Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, because most of us, that's fresh in our minds. We've gone through it already in our assignments. However, I'm very happy to come back to that at a later stage, and I will be creating further videos, particularly in response to the assignment. I will be posting videos with that when we are finished with the marking process. So this is just a very brief summary, a very brief kind of foundational starting point about what's important, what you should focus on for each theory and section. It is by no means the only thing you should cover, but I just wanted to point out some very important key principles to focus on for each study session. So study session 1, just to explain to you, because sometimes it's important for you to understand when we were putting this together, what was our rationale, what was our thought processes. So study session 1 basically explains the foundations of psychological theory. It provides the foundations about why psychology is classified as a scientific discipline of understanding human development and human behavior. And obviously what underpins human development and human behavior is very complex. There's many different avenues to look at, and each theory basically focuses on a different avenue. So while you are beginning to get a sense of session 1 and all the different lessons that are a part of this, you must aim to have a good overview and understanding of early schools of thought. So it's very important to start with the basics, start with the beginning. Very much like if you think of a building, it has to start with the foundation, starts with the starting point, and it then builds on. And that's how psychology works. And if you are thinking, building on knowledge, it reminds me of something, it should remind you of Vygotsky's theory. But we will get to that. And I'm hoping those participants who are sitting here or people who are watching in the recording later, you are thinking, oh, I know exactly what she's talking about. Let's hope so. But I will be coming back to that. But it's very important to start with the foundation, because then we can understand where things develop from there. So very important to understand what were these early schools of thought, and how did these early schools of thought inform contemporary understanding, so modern understanding about psychology. Psychology has evolved and grown as a science and a discipline, but it's very important to see where did it start from. So from our Greek philosophers, where they had a lot of psychological thoughts, but maybe did not necessarily study these. That's why it couldn't have been termed a science. But as it progressed, and as theorists now started studying this under controlled conditions, we see a development and a growth in psychology. And very important when we are getting a sense of these formative understanding, foundational understanding, always come back to the three core psychological forces. Okay, in our previous live session, that live session one from, I think it was the 29th of February, I spoke about this in quite a lot of detail, but I really want you to, when you are revising theory, you come back to these core psychological forces, because every single one of the theories that we will encounter and explore are link back to those core forces. So it's very important for you to start in your understanding, start with those basic thoughts of what is behaviorism, what is psychodynamic theory, what is humanistic theory, and how do these basic principles or basic tenets of the theory relate then to further theory that we will encounter, and how maybe are they different. So each theory that we will encounter, from Bronfenbrenner to Vygotsky to Carl Rogers, they link back to those psychological forces in some way or another. So very important that you start with the basics and you build on from that foundation. Okay, so all of these theories, I have explained this already, seek to understand and explain human behavior. But because human behavior is so complex, no one theory is perfect. We must consider multiple lenses. We must consider multiple theories in order to understand a complex human being. And once again, very important for you to make this personally relevant to yourself. Which theory do you agree with and which theory do you disagree with? Every theory has strengths and contributions, and other theories have weaknesses or shortcomings. And it's really interesting with the evolution and growth of psychology. A lot of the times, a shortcoming of one theory becomes the key building blocks of another theory. So as you're going through this, make it relevant, make it meaningful, and see those connections. It's not important for you to understand every single date and every single detail, but it is important for you to understand the theory as a whole. So as you progress through other theories, I think I'm marching ahead in my train of thought, but as you progress through other theories and sessions, focus on how all the theories relate back to these core psychological theories. So keep coming back to this. I can't emphasize this enough. It is the foundation of psychological thought. Okay, so study session 2, this is lessons 4 and 8. We will be explaining that, but I want to link the explanation of the upcoming lessons back to this model or diagram from our holism approach to understanding human beings. And if you are thinking, this picture looks very familiar, and feeling a sense of deja vu, it's because I've taken it straight from your study guide. But what I wanted to explain here is that each one of the psychological theories in some way or another link back to these different dimensions. And if we come back to holism and understanding a person, in order to understand behavior, we can't just focus on one dimension of a human being. We have to focus on various dimensions. You might think back to that classic holistic line of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And what that means is that in order to understand the singular, the individual person, we need to consider each of these parts or dimensions of their life. And each of the approaches that we are going to look at focuses on a different dimension. So we are going to be looking at Vygotsky. He focuses on the cognitive dimension. We are also going to be focusing on Carl Rogers. He looks at the emotional dimension. We are also going to be looking at nature-nurture. Nature focuses on physical, and nurture is perhaps more social. So come back to this wheel of growth and see how various psychological theories fit back to these different dimensions. Okay, so as we progress onward, for lesson 4, we look at the nature-nurture debate. So like I've already said, from that holism, the nature-nurture debate, nature refers to the physical and nurture refers to our social. So I think, and there is a forum, sorry, not a forum, I think it's a wiki that I have posted online, and many of you have started participating on this nature-nurture debate. And what this debate looks at is the controversy around which factors shape behavior. If we look at the word debate, I'm sure we generally know that a debate refers to some kind of disagreement. And psychologists try to come to some kind of consensus or agreement about what shapes behavior. So this is the classic picture that a lot of the times is shown for the nature-nurture debate. We see the two children on the one side, we see pictures of chromosomes, we see pictures of the leaves. On the other side, there is the hand that's holding the child. And this refers to the nature-nurture. When we're looking at nature on the left-hand side, we are looking at genetic predispositions. This also refers to aptitudes. So this is something that is internal. A child or person basically has a predisposition for a specific behavior. So those who focus on physiological psychology, those who focus on the physical will consider this. But at the other end of the spectrum, the other end of the debate, we have our nurture. So that is where the social environment shapes specific behaviors. So it's from anything from your cultural understanding to your parental upbringing. And with this, it's very important to look at how do these two shape the behaviors of a child? How do these two different forces actually inform your own behavior? So think back to what personality traits would you have inherited from your parents? These can be physical physical traits, and they can be personality traits as well. But then it's also very important to consider your upbringing and your experiences and how this shapes your behavior. So very important when you are looking at this debate, consider what is nature, what is nurture. Consider what the contemporary perspective is. I'm not going to tell you what that is in the session. I want you to go to your study guide. It is there and your textbook does explain this. And then I want you to think about, where do you stand on this debate? We know that a debate is a disagreement. Do you believe that behavior is determined solely by nature, by our genetics, or is it determined solely by our environment? And with this, you will remember that in your study guide, well, hopefully you've come to this, in your study guide, also on the ECI page, we have these case studies of feral children, and they really provide a lot of insights into how specific behavioral traits And the most famous feral child that we looked at was the case of Jeannie. And we actually found that something, so her ability to communicate, her ability to speak, something that is a human trait, something that is a disposition, actually she was unable to do this because of the environment. So what we see with feral children is the importance of the environment and also shaping behavior. But we also see that as soon as she was in a supportive environment, she was able to communicate and she was able to progress through the various stages of language development. So that provides a lot of insight into how behavior develops and how it's shaped by various forces. So on this note also, it's very important that when you go on the ECR page, and I've provided a lot of links to different resources, different additional activities, YouTube pages, articles. I've done this for a purpose to help you to engage with subject material. And I think it's very important that when you are seeking to understand theory, you must think of these examples, these case studies that we looked at, and how that actually reveals something about a therapeutic or a psychological approach. Okay, so sorry, Simon, just at this point, how much longer do I have?
Evelyn, you've got about 7 minutes left.
Okay, great. At some point, you can just tell me when I'm running out of time, but hopefully we can wrap this up quite quickly.
Sure.
Also, just so students are aware, if we do run out of time, I'm very happy to do a further recording because there are a lot of things I'd like to discuss in this. So coming back to, lesson 5, we have Erikson's ego psychosocial theory. And what's very important about this is that obviously we are aware that it is a lifespan theory. It looks at human behavior and development over the lifespan. And each one of the stages of development or has a specific crisis. So at each kind of stage of our lives, we deal with a particular crisis, and that crisis is determined by our age and circumstances in that particular age. So when you are encountering this, I really would like you to study this very smartly. So to think about, as a teacher, what stages would I need to be familiar with, bearing in mind the children that will be in my classroom space, bearing in mind the age of the learner. But it's also very important that sometimes the learner, because when we discuss Erikson's ego psychosocial theories, it's a stepwise approach. The learner might be basically stuck in a crisis in the previous stage. And thus it's very important that we be very mindful of the behaviors that they are displaying in the classroom. What behaviors are they capable of? What are they not capable of? And what is that then communicating? So I have posted this summary of the different stages, the life crisis, and the challenge on our ECR page. But I really want you to, it's just a basic summary. But what I want to kind of you to take home about this is that at each crisis point, there is a challenge. This challenge is either overcome successfully or this challenge is either overcome unsuccessfully. If it's overcome successfully, then there is an ego strength that is developed. Ego strength meaning like a personality strength. And this then facilitates the progression onto the next stage. So that's why it's very important. And I'm going to remind you of the word of the epigenetic principle. So the epigenetic principle, epi meaning time or point, genetics we've already established, it's what's internal. Erikson believed that these were genetically laid kind of crises points at specific ages, but it's very important to also consider how the environment supports this in either developing an ego strength or an ego deficit. So be very mindful when you are studying this, what stages will the child be in, and also make it personally relevant. What stage are you likely to be in? Obviously, the thing that's very important is looking at the age, because that's likely indicates what stage the child or what you should be in. But then it's also very important for you to think, am I in this stage, or perhaps am I in a previous stage because I'm dealing with previous issues or previous challenges? Maybe I don't, my ego strength is not fully developed. It's only something you can ask, but it's very important that you think critically about this. And whenever you see the word think critically, you need to not just passively accept, you need to engage and consider. And you will see in your online assessments tasks, there will be lots of critically explore, and you need to then explore various parts of the theory or various parts of your position or idea. Okay, so the lesson 7, I'm going to go through this quite quickly, but Kohlberg looks at the development of morality and various stages. So the best way to understand this, please go through the Heinz Dilemma interactive video. It's a really lovely resource for you to identify what level of morality are you currently at, based on the reasonings that you give to this dilemma issue. Sorry, my battery's just about to die. Let me just plug this in quickly. Sorry about that. So very important when you are looking at this, the Heinz Dilemma is where you can start by understanding Kohlberg, because this is his very famous case study about how he identified what morality, what level of moral development a person was at. And moral development is all about the society. So when we are younger, our kind of morality is really based on self-interest. We then grow up, we progress, we begin to understand that there's rules of society. We begin to consider, how do people think about us? Do they see us as a good person? Do they see us as a bad person? And we want them to see us as a good person. And this is particularly with children in the foundation phase. And this is where the good boy, nice girl level comes in. But go through this interactive video, because it really is a good starting point, understanding the morality and understanding how this case study is used, because what Kohlberg did was he believed that in order to understand what level of morality you're at, it's very important to understand the reasonings about why you make a specific decision. So this decision is, what should Heinz do to save his wife? You then have to respond, and basically based on your response, it will tell you what level of morality you're at. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. Then lesson 8, I know we are running out of time a little bit, but lesson 8, this is a picture also taken straight from your study letter. It's looking at cognitive development and Vygotsky's theory. And whenever you think of Vygotsky, the first 2 words I want you to come into your mind, Vygotsky, you need to think of the zone of proximal development and scaffolding, because these are the foundations of his theory. His theory of the zone of proximal development was revolutionary for a teacher, because what this argued is that with the correct nurturing, with the correct teaching approach, with the correct environment, you can actually pull children to a higher level of knowledge. So there's beginning in the center of that is what the child already knows, their prior learning, what they can do without assistance. But then there is that zone of proximal development. How can they develop with the appropriate nurture and the appropriate environmental prompts and tools? And that's where you as the teacher come in. And that's why I love this theory so much, because it really, puts the ball in your court as a teacher. It's not to say that children are lost causes. Yes, maybe they will only get to a baseline. We can never just, create the next Mozart. There needs to be that predisposition in the person, but we can always get a child to a competent level. So even with musical development, or mathematical development, sometimes there's just this aptitude in the child. We cannot explain, they just get this. There might be a genetic link to that, or there's just this aptitude, this gift. But it's not to say that we can't actually encourage development in children. And there's a lot of debate around, can we actually nurture giftedness? Can we nurture this? Or is it something that needs to be inborn in a person? And I want you to think about this very carefully when you are going through Vygotsky's theory, and to consider what you as the teacher, what environment do you set up in the classroom to ensure that nobody gets left behind, and to ensure that you lift a child to that zone of proximal development where they actually can achieve to a relatively competent level. So it really puts the ball into your court. So that's what I really love about this. And you'll see some really open-ended questions on this particular theory. It lends itself very nicely to higher ordered application questions. And one of the past papers, there was a question that I posed about bursaries and scholarship programs, and how people are given it based on specific factors. And it's all about identifying what is it that they can do already, and then with given the correct environment, can they then be pulled to a higher level of awareness and higher knowledge. So a lot of scholarships and bursaries look for this aptitude or potential really in a child. So I want you to, when you are thinking about these theories, come back to those past papers and look at those questions and see how would you approach the question, how would you approach that debate. Then with lesson 9, so we have the principles of learning and behavior modifications. Very important that you get a sense of the experiment. So the key experiments here is the baby Albert experiment and Pavlov's dog's experiment. So look at these approaches. Very importantly, Shem, I know we're running out of time. I don't want to keep us from the next session, but can I get 5 more minutes? Simon, is that okay? 2 more minutes? 1 more minute?
Kevin, I think 2 more minutes. Thank you.
Okay, two, just, okay, thank you, sorry. So very important, what students always mistake or misunderstand about positive reinforcement and positive punishment is that they think that the word positive means good. But in actual fact, when we're talking about this from a learning theories perspective, positive actually means adding something. So just for instance, positive punishment is in actual fact smacking a child, because you are adding an unpleasant punishment. You are smacking the child in order to decrease a specific behavior, in order to disencourage a specific behavior. And I know students really struggle with this, saying that hitting a child is positive punishment. It doesn't mean that you think it's good. It's just meaning that positive, you are adding either encouraging, so either a reinforcement or you are adding a punishment. So come back to this idea, positive is giving something, negative is taking something away. Okay, we are not going to have time to do this, but I'll come back to Cole Rogers on ECI. But just the final comment that I want to make to end off the session is that it's very important that you do not aim to memorize information. It's very important that you aim to make it personally relevant. Rote memorization is ineffective study techniques. You really need to get a personal, meaningful connection. You need to self-reflect on the theories. You need to make it personally relevant. And then you should find that the online assessment tasks, you should really enjoy completing them. I will put further details about this on ECI. Please use the forum spaces to ask specific questions, and I will then respond to those questions. Whew. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you.
Trevlin, we don't have any questions or comments on either platform.
That's
just a big thank you for a fascinating and really enjoyable session. So much insight there, lots to take away.
Thank you. And just for students, please use those forum spaces. There's a lot of things here.